Abandonment Abyss in Psychology and Philosophy. Dear viewer, let's dive deep into the human experience of abandonment. We'll explore the psychological and philosophical caverns of loneliness, the ache of longing, and the path towards finding freedom. Abandonment is a ghost that haunts the halls of the human heart, a spectre of solitude that lingers long after love has left. Whether through the cruel abyss of a breakup, the silent withdrawal of a caregiver, or the existential ache of a universe indifferent to our cries, the feeling of being forsaken strikes deep. It is both a psychological injury and a philosophical riddle, a pain that pulses in the psyche and a paradox that puzzles the most profound thinkers. In this exploration, we traverse two realms, including the clinical corridors of psychology, where abandonment is a wound to be healed, and the shadowed valleys of philosophy, where it is a truth to be confronted. We uncover how therapists mend shattered trust, how philosophers stare into the void, and how, in the end, abandonment may be not just an ending, but a beginning. Warning: this video may contain traces of pretentious vocabulary, meandering metaphors, intentional alliteration, and a sleep-inducing monotone narration. Part 1. The Psychology of Abandonment, when the bond breaks. Dear viewer, where does abandonment begin? Abandonment is not merely an event. It is an emotional implosion, shaking the foundations of attachment. Psychologists trace its tremors to childhood, where the first fractures form. A child left crying in the dark, a parent emotionally absent. These early ruptures plant seeds of insecurity that grow into tangled vines of fear. Infants rely on caregivers for survival. Their distress at separation reveals a biological imperative to remain connected. When this need is repeatedly unmet, as an infant or child, whether through neglect, loss, or rejection, the psyche absorbs the wound, fostering insecurities that ripple through adulthood. Attachment theory, developed by John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth, reveals how inconsistent care breeds adults who cling like vines, anxious, preoccupied attachment, or retreat like tortoises, avoidant attachment, their relationships shadowed by the spectre of loss. The psychological symptoms of abandonment can be intense and debilitating. Like a tsunami wave, anxiety and panic can sweep over us, leaving us feeling overwhelmed and helpless. Fear of intimacy, difficulty trusting others, and self-sabotaging relationships can become entrenched patterns, making it challenging to form and maintain healthy connections. Emotional dysregulation, characterized by intense anger, sadness, or desperation, can further exacerbate the experience of abandonment. The scars of sudden loss, including death, divorce, or desertion, can cut deeper than physical wounds. The brain encodes abandonment as trauma, etching neural pathways that flare at the slightest hint of rejection. Even years later, a lover's lie or a friend's fading trust can reignite old trauma, making present pain echo the past. Symphony of symptoms. How abandonment plays the mind. The symptoms of abandonment go far beyond simple sadness. Profound distress and even panic ensues. For some, anxiety becomes a relentless alarm, their hearts pounding with a frantic rhythm, their minds consumed by the agonizing question, "What if they leave me?" For others, depression descends like a heavy fog, with its chilling whisper, "No one stays," weighing down their very soul. In a heartbreaking attempt to outrun the pain, some tragically push love away, sabotaging connections before they can be broken. Yet, for others still, abandonment isn't just a fear, it's a raging inferno. In individuals with borderline personality disorder, the intense terror of rejection can ignite overwhelming emotional explosions, a turbulent storm of rage and desperate pleas that inadvertently drive loved ones away. The very abandonment they dread becomes a self-inflicted prophecy, a cruel paradox that traps them in an endless cycle of longing and loss. alchemy of healing. Treatments to transform pain. Therapists approach abandonment not as a life sentence, but as a laceration that can heal, though the scar may remain. Cognitive behavioral therapy challenges the catastrophic chorus of "I'll always be left," replacing it with a steadier refrain: "I've survived before. I am not my past." By dissecting distorted thoughts, patients learn to separate past trauma from present reality, untangling the knots of fear that bind them. Dialectical behavior therapy, designed for those with borderline personality disorder, teaches emotional alchemy, which melts panic into patience and rage into resilience. Through mindfulness, distress tolerance, and interpersonal skills, patients learn to weather abandonment storms without capsizing. Attachment therapy rebuilds the broken bridges of trust, one tentative step at a time. Through corrective experiences with therapists or loved ones, clients learn that connection doesn't always end in catastrophe. It is a slow unfurling, like a flower learning to face the sun after a long winter. Psychodynamic therapy can help individuals by exploring the underlying causes and emotions driving feelings of abandonment. People can gain insight into their experiences and develop more effective ways of managing their emotions. For those whose abandonment is etched in severe trauma, EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, dulls the sharp edges of memory. By reprocessing painful events, the mind files them away as history rather than prophecy. Group therapy provides a supportive environment where individuals can share their experiences, break the cycle of shame, learn from others, and practice new relational skills. And then there's the antidote of mindfulness, which is the practice of breathing through abandonment's ache, observing it like a passing storm cloud rather than being swept away by its winds. Healing abandonment also requires self-compassion, which is a gentle, internal embrace that reminds the injured psyche that it is indeed worthy of love. Part 2. The philosophy of abandonment, staring into the void. On an equally profound level, dear viewer, the abyss of abandonment looms large within the realm of existential philosophy. Unlike the interpersonal abandonment addressed by psychology, existential philosophy delves into the fundamental solitude of human existence. Jean-Paul Sartre, The Agony and Ecstasy of Freedom. Where psychologists see an injury, philosophers see a mirror, one that reflects humanity's rawest truths. Jean-Paul Sartre declared that we are condemned to be free, abandoned not by people, but by the universe itself. No God, no destiny, just the dizzying abyss of choice. Man is abandoned because nothing limits him, not even himself. The terror and the triumph? We sculpt our own souls. Friedrich Nietzsche, Abandonment as an Invitation. Friedrich Nietzsche laughed into the void. God is dead, he proclaimed, not in mourning, but in defiance. The collapse of old certainties wasn't a tragedy, but an invitation. Now we must become gods ourselves. For Nietzsche, abandonment was the furnace where the Übermensch, superhuman, was forged, a crucible that burned away weakness to reveal unshackled potential. Heidegger, the thrownness of being. Martin Heidegger spoke of Geworfenheit, or thrownness. We are hurled into existence, no manual, no meaning, like sailors cast onto an uncharted sea. We are cast adrift in a world that does not care. Yet within this abandonment lies a call to live authentically, to build meaning like a ship in a storm rather than waiting for rescue. For Heidegger, confronting our thrownness is the first step toward true being. Kierkegaard, The Leap of Faith. Søren Kierkegaard framed abandonment as divine drama. In fear and trembling, he wrestled with Abraham's near sacrifice of Isaac, which was a story of ultimate desertion, where God's command seemed like a betrayal. Yet Kierkegaard saw this as faith's crucible. Faith begins where reason ends, he wrote. True belief meant trusting even when heaven seemed hollow, embracing the paradox that abandonment might be God's most severe mercy. Camus, The Rebel's Reply. Albert Camus saw the universe as a sphinx which is smiling, silent and cruel. In The Myth of Sisyphus, he grappled with the absurd, including when humanity's cry for meaning is met with cosmic indifference. Yet Camus' answer wasn't despair, but rebellion. Love, create and fight, not because it matters, but because we must. To roll the boulder up the hill endlessly, knowing it will roll back down, and yet to find joy in the struggle, that was Camus' defiance. De Beauvoir, Feminist Philosophy and the Abandonment of the Other. Simone de Beauvoir exposed how society abandons women to roles of wife, mother and object, denying them the freedom to define themselves. In The Second Sex, she dissected the quiet attack of expectation, the way cultural scripts render women strangers to their own potential. Judith Butler expanded this critique, warning of precarity, which was the systemic abandonment of marginalized lives, treated as disposable by political and social machinery. For both, abandonment wasn't fate, but a fight. A call to dismantle the structures that exile the other to the edges of existence. Part 3. The Synthesis. From Abyss to Awakening. Abandonment is a double-edged sword. In psychology, it is a hurt, but hurts heal, often leaving scars of wisdom. In philosophy, it is a wake-up call. It is a demand to live boldly, love deeply, and defy the dark. The therapist's tools and the philosopher's torches illuminate the same truth. To be abandoned is not to be alone. It is to join the human race in all its fragility, fury, and fierce beauty. Therapy offers comfort for the soul, including ways to stitch oneself back together with self-compassion and secure relationships. Philosophy offers a compass, pointing not toward answers, but toward the courage to face the questions. Together, they form a map through the labyrinth, a way to transform abandonment from a prison into a passage. Phoenix in the fire. Abandonment burns, but from its ashes, we rise as stronger, wiser, and wilder. From the psychologist's salves of compassion and the philosopher's torches of enlightenment, along with our own bravery, we light the way out of the labyrinth. So let the abandonment come, dear viewer. Let it carve you hollow and then fill you with fire. In the end, we can survive being abandoned by others, but what we cannot survive is being abandoned by ourselves.